only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello, and this is episode 23 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. And it's really nice to be with you this week as we get towards Easter. And I first of all just wanted to say thank you to a number of people who've been very kind enough to write in this week. Particularly, it was comforting to hear people who were very sympathetic with the situation that exists with my children, and I just want to let you know that it's going much better. I think any form of eating disorder, which ultimately is a mental disorder, is a difficult thing to deal with in a family, and I think it's something that, as I found last week, it's an experience that we all have to try our best to learn from and live through, and I think probably this is what's been happening in the last few days. We had a very intense discussion on a Sunday, and very open as a family, and I think it's going to help us all in the long term. So they're getting much better already, and I hope we're beginning to see the end of the beginning. And also, I thought it was quite interesting this week if we look back at some of the other podcasts that I did. One, of course, was very, very interesting, and that was when the late Queen Elizabeth II came through. And I remember, although as I think I may have mentioned to you before, I never listened to the podcasts once I've recorded them beyond just a minute or two just to master them before I put them online. I feel this imposter syndrome, you see. I don't really want to hear myself talking, and I'd rather just be left with the memories in my mind and leave it to Titan and the others to do the speaking. But I do remember Queen Elizabeth II came through, and I remember her being really very warm and very loving, and making a point of telling us to be more caring and more loving towards her family, who, for whatever sort of spiritual reasons, had almost very little choice in the fact that they have reincarnated in that particular role. And I was asking, I seem to remember, just for a little bit of love and understanding, because everything in the life of the monarchy and the future of the monarchy was being decided at this particular time. And I think she also indicated that she felt that so much of her life, unlike previous monarchs, although I must say some monarchs did a good job trying, in her case it was leading up to the eventual end of the monarchy, because perhaps our spiritual development on earth was getting sufficiently high that we no longer needed perhaps to have these hereditary monarchs to somehow validate our lives or to represent something that we should aspire to. I think it was her words, not mine. I think she felt that the time had come, and she mentioned that there would be some very significant events happening in the next few, I think she said weeks or months, and she said it wasn't necessarily related to what everybody would have thought, Prince Andrew, who has been in the media for all the wrong reasons. So I thought this was a very interesting thing to say. And lo and behold, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, I think at least 3 major events have happened. I think one member of the British royal family shot himself. The king has got cancer. And I think in the last few weeks it was announced that Princess Kate, William's wife, has also got cancer. And what was particularly interesting, of course, was how terribly the media behaved, and probably a lot of people behaved, because they were very uncaring and very intrusive and very accusative about the whole situation, and the conspiracy theories abounded. So it seemed to me a very interesting foretelling of what would be happening, and she was giving us that heads up a few weeks ago. And I think we're left now with a situation where people are certainly questioning the monarchy, because it's not looking terribly healthy. But that's not what we're going to be doing this week. It was just very interesting to see how things had somehow come true, as Queen Elizabeth had told us it would. I am always very surprised in terms of time, how things may occur to us in a few weeks, but in the spiritual realm, from what I can gather now, time really has no meaning at all. Everything can be seen simultaneously. But yes, there's obviously an awful lot that's going to be happening in our particular time, and I think there are a lot of spirits working with us to help us develop. So this week, coming on to this week, as normal, something usually happens to me, and I get a very strong feeling that I have a reasonable idea what the podcast is going to be about. And I'd barely finished the last one, which also had a little bit about near-death experiences. Then I believed that something was coming through very, very strongly, that not only would I be facing a member of my family who would be dying shortly, but this presence was coming through to me because a couple of my correspondents who listen faithfully to this podcast have recently been through bereavements, and have of course sent me lots of questions and lots of things that I would try to answer. Many of them I have tried to answer already with Titan and others. But this week it's a little bit more personal because, again, I have my mother who's 89 and in September, and I got a call a few days ago that she was very, very seriously ill in hospital in the United Kingdom. I'm not going there yet because I think she's still in hospital and she's got pneumonia, she's got dementia and all sorts of difficult things, and she's got a very loving son there also looking after him. So at the moment I'm sure she's in good hands, but she's a tremendous fighter and she just doesn't let go. Why? I think because she loves material things. She really enjoys her house. She's always enjoyed the things that her parents left her. She really enjoys this earth, and I think she's completely and utterly, if you want the word, addicted to this earth, and she's not going to let go. But I had the very strong feeling that it would have actually happened today, that she would let go finally and that she would move on. And that's because I felt a very strong feeling that this week people would come through and talk to us about what actually does happen at the point of death. And so today I want to ask, and I will switch off the podcast in a few seconds, and it'll be 10 minutes for me and a minute for you, but today I'm going to ask for some spirit to come through, anyone really who would like to come through and talk to us about the process beyond the dying. We've done the dying already, but what happens when you are actually leaving your physical body? So I'm back, and that was actually extremely quick. A man called Martin just came straight in, and he said, "I'm Martin." I immediately thought of an old school teacher that I had called Martin, but to the very best of my knowledge, Martin is still alive, very much so. I saw him, I think, about 3 years ago. He must be in his 80s, unless, of course, he's passed on since. I have no idea. So, Martin, are you my old school teacher? And he's saying, no, he's not. So that clears that one up. Martin, so thank you very much for coming through. You popped in very, very quickly, and it interests me always that there often seems to be a sort of a queue of people wanting to come through and talk. But can I ask why you particularly wanted to come and talk to me today? He's saying because you sent for me. Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't aware that I had sent for you. He said, yes, you had. You'd obviously been thinking an awful lot, he said, about this process of dying and near-death experiences. And ultimately, you're, of course, concerned, I think, but he's saying that you're probably interested as well about the passing of your mother shortly. And he said Martin was someone in her past, my mother's past. He said you can probably ask her if she's still able to talk to you, but it'll become a little bit more obvious in time who Martin was. But Martin was someone that both my mother and my father knew very well. And he's saying that when my mother and father used to work in the 80s and 90s as teachers. They knew Martin. Now, I'm beginning to think I know Martin, because I think, Martin, are you my old headmaster at the school that I was at? And he's saying he is. So this is Mr. Martin Rogers. Well, it's lovely to know you. And I think it's a wonderful feeling, because I can feel the warmth and the love and the kindness of this man, if I may say so, Martin. When you were alive, I think you were the most wonderful headmaster of the school. And I heard you did pass not long after my father in 2011. And he said, that's right. He said, you'll probably remember that I did actually speak to you on the phone shortly after your father passed. And he said he passed a few years after that. But anyway, he said, we're not here to talk about particularly the whole story of him. But he thought, since I know him and I would find it very easy to communicate with him, he could try to explain to us the process after dying. Okay, thank you, Martin. If I could just let everyone who's listening know that Martin, I think, was a scientist. I believe he was a chemist before he became a headmaster. Is that right? He's saying, he said, yes, I suppose that's a good way to describe it. But beyond that, he was a very progressive headmaster, a very kind man. I believe also very religious, and yes, I think, as Titan has said to me before, it's not very easy to communicate with people who you don't actually know or been introduced to. Maybe you could start with that then, Martin. Tell me a little bit about that process. Martin, he's actually holding up a picture, and it's a picture of a family with children. And he's saying to me that look at this as an example of where he is now, and where we all will be when we die. He's with a group of spirits, and he says there are a range of levels of spirit based on the experience that they've had. If you want to call them souls, you can call them souls. He says we don't have a language per se, because he's saying most of our communication is done completely telepathically through our mind and through our eyes, although we don't have eyes, but we have receptors, he says. And he said if you could see us, we would look probably like a lot like the traditional ghosts, he said. We'd be very white, misty, and with sort of sunken black sockets for eyes. He said that's probably how we present ourselves, he said. But that's only a way of being able to identify ourselves to each other according to the color of the light around us. And he says that it starts off pretty much white, but as we become more and more adept, he says, and more higher up in the spiritual realms or in the soul levels, he says that this changes in color, and it goes to all sorts of colors, but probably some of the higher souls are very blue. And for other reasons, different souls are yellow, quite often to start with. Other souls could be green, and what he describes as particularly quite heavy souls can be almost dark brown, reddish color, and it can even get as dark as black. But he says what we're talking about now, and he thought he could explain to us all what happens at the point that you finally do break that bond. So what is breaking the bond exactly? Martin says that when we choose to come into our bodies, which we choose to do during the course of probably the first few months of a pregnancy, and we choose the body, or the body is chosen for us, or there's a conversation that's had, maybe in Earth years, it could be hundreds of years of planning to choose for a particular soul to go into a particular body, or whatever particular body will potentially become available. And he says the type of life that body potentially will have, and the probable futures and the learnings that will be encountered by that person. These things are all taken into account. But he says before we get there, let's just suggest that life is now over. And at the point that life is over, everything pulls out of the physical body. And the physical body, which is just a vehicle, ceases to be alive. and the soul can no longer be inside that body, so it physically leaves, and it returns to the level where it came from to start with, which is a very close level. It's through, I think he's saying, it's through a certain level that is just above the earth, if you like, and once you go through that level as well, you come to a sort of a reception area, and he says at that point you still can have a connection with Earth. Why would you want to do that, Martin? He said because a lot of people, when they pass, they have tremendous connection, of course, still with the people who loved them and the people that they wanted to be with. Some people, perhaps due to illness, weren't really ready to leave straight away. Others, it might have been an accident and they're completely shocked and didn't quite realize what was happening to them. So everybody goes to a sort of reception area, and he says that in the case of himself, it wasn't such a drama because he was an old man when he died, and he had an illness, but he kind of had pretty much accepted, he said also through his Christian faith, that this would be the end of his life, and he would in turn move, as he thought, into heaven. He said it's completely true. That there are a range of people in the spirit world, and they are designed to help spirits who are returning acclimatize to the situation in which they find themselves. He said it can be really very scary to suddenly leave your body, suddenly have all that knowledge that you had before you went into your body of all your previous lives, all your potential lives, all the people that you have travelled with or been with over the years. It becomes incredibly overbearing for some people. The saturation of knowledge can be almost overbearing. And there is a reception committee that's ready for you. Now, this reception committee can take a number of forms based on the level of soul that you are and the amount of times that you've reincarnated. But he's also saying it depends also on the state that your soul is in on arrival. Some souls are very damaged and their energy is extremely fragmented, and they need to be repaired in certain respects before they can move on or begin to choose another reincarnational experience. Again, here from his point of view, he didn't feel that it was really that necessary that he had to have a lot of repair done, although there are all sorts of guides there who are very adept at this process, which is what they do, and they can work with your energy and they can help in various locations, and there are particular locations for this, he says, where your energy can be restored and healed, and it goes, he says, from those that are very, very damaged, that could take potentially in your timelines 50, 60, 100 years to try to repair that energy, or there could be other places where you can go where there isn't an awful lot of repair that's needed at all, or none, because you've lived the life as you intended to live the life. You haven't done anything that could cause your energy to be disrupted in any way, and you're probably almost ready to choose your next course of action. So he says there are a lot of guides that come and help you for all sorts of reasons. And then, of course, he said that obviously he's heard, of course, that people feel that they're members of the family that can be there, maybe old pets. He said, I think you've discussed that before. Yeah, I think we had that last time. He said, well, of course, this is true because you do stay with a soul family. It's very common that there are maybe anything from 5 to 10 people that you're very close to, and that you choose to reincarnate with in previous lives or future lives, or indeed if you choose to incarnate in other worlds where you could be a completely different form of life. He said that these are all choices that can be made as at the point that you've died and you've moved into this reception area realm. Okay. And he's saying that many souls obviously do feel very happy to see the people who are waiting for them. Some people are obviously not there, he said, because they've already reincarnated again in some other body. Or, he says, they may be there, but they also could be dividing their time between the spiritual world and also being on Earth. He said it's not that common, but it does happen, that there is a sort of a duality, that a soul can split itself, its energy, into or more portions, and assign a portion of their energy to a reincarnated human. And some of it will stay behind in the spirit world, or maybe reincarnate in another world. It takes a lot of energy to do that. He said most of the spirits who do that are quite experienced at doing that, but it does happen. He said that there's a free will of what you wish to do, but there are a load of people. He said it can't really go through it all now, but he said there are so many, if you like, hundreds of highly evolved souls here who have particular jobs that they love to do, and they're all there to help the souls develop, either to restore them when they come back from a human incarnation, or to teach them things that will enable them to choose their next incarnation better, or if indeed they don't wish to incarnate as a human anymore, to move to higher levels. Okay, wow. Okay, so Martin, if I could ask, where exactly are you at the moment? He said that he's been learning to help souls who come over, and he said that's why he's here now, because he's getting ready to actually meet my mother when my mother passes. He says you obviously realize that she has this choice, and he said, as you said quite rightly, she has the freedom to choose when she wishes to go, and she is she's very focused on staying alive. She has a love of life. She doesn't wish to let go, and she will fight hard. But the time will come, and I'm here for her. And indeed, your father is there. He's saying, my father is there. I'm not terribly sure I'm ready for that, Martin. No, he says it's okay, but he is here. But you don't need to speak to him. It's fine. He's just there, and he wants you to know that his love is there. The entity that he was as your father is there, and he is ready. And a number of people that your mother will know from life and from previous lives, they will be there to greet her when she comes, and to remind her and help her bring her memory back, her spirit memory back, so she knows exactly what has happened, and that she's, if you like, returning from almost a dream and coming back to a reality that she thought was a dream. It's amazing. Okay, so when my mother passes, as you passed, she will come. And he said, yes, she'll come, and she'll come obviously in her energy form. And in her energy form, it may be in some disarray. It may be quite jumbled up, and depending on what happens to her. But when she passes, we will meet her, and then we will guide her to whatever particular help that she needs, in which particular location she should go to, in order to have her energy bolstered and in some ways almost remodeled if it's necessary, so she is ready for the next lessons that she needs to learn. Okay, Martin, so that's your job. Your job is to meet souls and to orient them. And he said, yes, it's a funny thing. He said it's because, in a way, that's very much what he's been doing with hundreds of lifetimes as well. He said, you knew me as a teacher and as a headmaster, but that's probably not a great surprise, because that's what I used to do. I used to welcome loads of school children. I used to try to introduce them to the community that we had created in the school, and to make them feel comfortable in the new life that they were in for maybe 5 or 6 years, where their whole life would be completely different from the way it was before. And he says it's funny, it's very similar to what he's doing now. He's meeting the souls, and he said it's a little easier because they will know me already, but it'll take them a while. And he said, again, I have to say, in some cases, it can take years in your time for them to be able to realize where they are. Do all souls accept that they've passed on? No. Obviously, it's a difficult thing for some people. Some souls never really experience this feeling of immediate acceptance of where they came from. It takes a little bit of prodding, he's saying. But we have so many skilled people and so obviously so much experience that nobody ever ends up being in trouble forever. It's always a question of time. It's a question of that soul accepting the situation they're in. But they have a lot of teaching, and they have a lot of people who are there to almost give them a form of energy therapy that will help them eventually understand the situation that they now find themselves in and accept it in order that they can move on. Okay, so when the souls move away from the initial reception area, Martin, what happens then? Well, then you can divide people up into various groups, and once they realize who they were and the choices that they had made in order to be reincarnated in that last life, they then go to a particular place. And he said, this is, again, you've got to be careful here, because over hundreds of years of religion in the world, the human world, the whole situation has become a little bit dogmatic, shall we say. He said, this isn't heaven, and there isn't a hell. There is no judgment. There is just education. There is slow progress in some cases. There's fast progress in others. But there's just an acceptance and an understanding. There is nobody to say that you should do things this way or that way. But at the point that your soul has been acclimatized back to beyond the reception period, and you now know who you are and who your soul family is and all the people in your group, you will then be taken to a particular place. He says there are buildings like this. He said they can be any shape or size you like. They can be rectangular, they can be square, they can be spherical, they can be cylindrical, triangular, they can be pyramid shaped, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But generally he's saying they actually, for the particular reason that they're there, these buildings tend to have the same shape, because over a period of time, people have all pretty much chosen that shape, and it becomes a very strong force, and the reality has been created. But suppose in your mother's case, as in my case, I was taken to this very large room where there were lots of people, and they were sitting in groups. But I was with a particular group of people who I had known in my past life, and had been part of my past life, and we had chosen to do things together. And we spend, in our terms, it might be just a few hours, but of course in we don't have time like you do. So I suppose you might look at it and think that they've done this for years. And it could be. It's like a school. He says it's just like a school. And we sit and we have teachers who come, and they tend to be very old souls. They're very highly developed, highly evolved souls who've, again, their particular interest and desire is to help younger souls such as me, and in fact your mother, understand things better and to prepare for a new life or new learning. Okay, so you went into this room and you found a group of people. How did you know where to go? And he said, it's very simple. You know immediately where to go. It's a sense of telepathy again. You know who belongs to your group. Can you intermingle with other people in other groups? He said, yes, it is possible, but not very desirable at this first phase, because there's not much point getting too involved in other groups at this point, because you should be spending this time to analyze the choices that you made in your life versus the plan that you had going in. I see. He said, this again, don't confuse this with a form of judgment or anything. This is a chance with experts to sit around and discuss various things that had happened. And he said, we have the opportunity, we have tools at our disposal that enable us to do this. And he said in these particular buildings, they have what I think you have probably discussed before, Philip. He's saying you have kind of a life books. These are kind of three-dimensional, almost like televisions that are books, but you open them up. I'm thinking of Harry Potter. And he's saying, yes, you could say it's a little like that, if that makes you feel comfortable. But every soul who has a life, or who doesn't have a life, even for that matter, but particularly if you were discussing a previous life, will have a life book. And that book will be a representation of all the key learnings, all the key timelines, and all the intersections of timelines that were altered by changes of your decision-making. You get the chance to review some of the decisions that you made, how you kept along those lives, how you diverged. And you learn not so much mistakes, but you learn the choices you made and whether they were the right choices and how they affected other people. He's saying that obviously if we could go back again to the religious model where people would think of judgment or hell or heaven, there is no hell. And there is no heaven. But there are people who have done very questionable things that you might even consider to be evil or violent or dangerous. Some souls repeatedly do this, and they go to this particular place to try to learn why they did it, and to try to realize that that is a pretty fruitless and pointless existence, and they need to change, and they need to become their energy needs to change in such a way that they become more productive and useful in order to move on. But there are other people, of course, who perhaps have spent their lives almost in a saintly way. But even they have to learn the sacrifices that they made, and the things that it may have caused in other people around them that may not have been so positive, or indeed it might have been positive, and they can probably say that they had the life that they were very prepared to have, and they can then discuss the learnings that they had. Okay, so all right, so everyone is sitting in these halls, and they are discussing their past life, and they're checking out their life, as I understand it, against a pre-arranged life. And he said, yeah, I want to also tell you that the life book represents not only the life that you had, but it also gives you the opportunity to see various decisions that you made and what would happen had you made a different decision. He said he could give an example. If you had made a decision in your life to do something very dramatic that might have even ended your life or ended someone else's life, you would get the chance in this particular place to look at what happened had you not made the decision to end your life or to have killed that person. What would have happened? What would the possibilities have been to you and to them? What were the causalities of what you actually have set in motion by the decisions that you made, not just in your case, but in a far, far wider zone, in a wider zone that a human is totally incapable of seeing, because it would involve so many hundreds of thousands of people and various decisions. But in this place, this is what we get the chance to do. Wow, so okay. So Martin, once you've been through that particular, I suppose you'd call it almost an assessment, wouldn't you? He said, yeah, you could call it an assessment. It's a review. It's a review, a critical review, if you like, of the life that you've just had, but with people that you've spent many lives with and in the company of extremely experienced guides. And could you then tell me what happens after that? He said he can't tell me very much more at this point, because this is where he is. He's very much involved in the reception area, and he's very involved in bringing people to these places where they can actually examine their life books and to discuss in detail and make decisions about the learnings that they're taking away from this particular life. And then they will move on to another level. but he says that he can't see that. He knows it's there. He says it's over there as far as he's concerned. It's almost a bit in the sort of blurry distance. But part of his learning, of course, is to get to that next level. But he's saying to me it's quite difficult for people from the higher levels to come to his level because they become so separate from human experience that for them to actually communicate directly with me or even with him at this particular point is not particularly easy. But he's saying to me he will try in the future to see if we can't get hold of some level, he's saying actually level 2 or level 3 or level 4. There are multitudinous levels beyond the level he's at. But he said he's a very young soul. His aura is a kind of a very whitey yellow color. His whole everything about him, his light radiates that. And his purpose at this particular point, and what he's particularly enjoying, is doing what he's doing, and that is he's a, if you like, you could call him a greeter guide, and he's there to organize that, and that's really as far as he could really describe things to me. Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Martin. It was really a pleasure to hear all those insights from you. But before you go, I've just got a question actually from Esther, who wrote to me, and she's very interested in the idea of the energy of souls. And could you tell me a little bit about the energy and exactly what that is? Yes, the energy that we're all made up of. You're made up of in a human form, but you have your consciousness energy from your soul in you. Most of it, some of it stays in where he is. A lot of it comes into you when you're born. You have a huge amount of energy. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be changed. Well, it can be changed. It can be amended. It can be adjusted, but it cannot be destroyed. Souls live forever in your terms, unlike humans. So it can merely just transform into something else. Where does this energy come from? It comes from the source. And he said that's really all I can say. So what is the source? Is that like a God or something like that? He said, well, not in terms of your understanding. He said the human understanding of God is a very crude kind of masculinization, or a kind of it's trying to give, he says, an impression that there is one being that's somehow at the center of it all. That would be a terrible mischaracterization, Philip, he's saying. If you like, the center of it all is we are all part of it, but we are also all part of the center. He said that's all I can really say to you. We basically work for the center, he says, but the center also works for us. But ultimately, we're all working our way to understand and to move towards that center where energy is and where souls are created. Sorry about that background noise. That was my phone going. Martin, I'm sorry about that. He said, it's okay. You have a human life to lead. And he said, it's actually very kind that you come through once a week and actually talk to us. And you can't completely put your life on hold, he said. And I said, that's true. But so, yeah, if we could perhaps just finish there, maybe, but you could quickly tell me about the energy then. And he said, he says that the energy forms, the energy forms in the center and radiates outward. And this energy is used in every form of reality. He said, you're not the only planet, you're not the only species. There are millions and millions of universes that are limitless distances apart, but you're all connected. All the different species on different planets are all connected to you. You are in a place after you die where you can choose where you wish to go, and if you wish to live on another planet. There are a range of planets that are either similar to where you are now or very different. There are lives that can be led that can teach different things, but that is the purpose. So If you think of your energy, your consciousness, that is a form of that is a particle of consciousness that is created in the center and is indestructible and eternal. All right, Martin, I think that is great, and thank you very much for that. And I look forward to us having more conversations in the future about it. Thank you. Bye-bye.